So some of the trends that we're seeing, when you look at these benefit structures, and you look at some of the alternative benefits specifically, what we're finding is that they've been out in the market long enough that companies are now trying to figure out how to formalize them. So things like telecommuting, for example, what does that mean? And when you say that to an employee, how do you structure that? How do you define that so that it works? So we're seeing formalization of processes across the board right now, and I would attribute it to the experience that a lot of companies have had over the last 5 years in the terminations that they've had to do and in trying to hire folks now. It's been a very different experience than it was 10 years ago, for example. And so I think companies have learned a lot about what is not quite working. And you do see it when you terminate an employee who's been in a program that wasn't well defined. How do we clean up the pieces? How do we pick things up? Or someone who's hired in a role that's not very well defined and things start to break down. So what are the tools that we can put in place to formalize that, which reduces risk to the business and reduces risk to the employee? So on the hiring and compensation side, focusing on documenting what the offer is, and whether that's a new hire or whether that's a job change, formalizing what that job looks like. Universally, almost universally, there are probably some of you who do this really, really well, that is not documented as well as it should be. It's more of a conversation, it's a performance review maybe, and it's a go out there and get it done. But the documentation is one of the core pieces of risk protection that the business has. So take that extra time, get the signatures on that new job offer, and build that in. Restrictive covenants is another area that is really bubbling to the top. This is the idea that you restrict your employees from, in some cases, competing with you, although that's a tougher sell, but usually from stealing your customers or stealing your employees if they leave. And that's a non-solicitation, which is more readily enforceable. Things like confidentiality, for those of you who have clients that your employees have access to their personal information or to their confidential information, having these restrictive covenants that clearly spell out, here are the things that are confidential that you can't disclose to another party. So getting those in place is important, and a lot of folks don't do it at the time of the hire. And if you don't do it at the time that you hire that person, the times that you can implement it are when you're giving them something else. So it's a bonus time, it's a new position, new title. There has to be a give and take in order for you to restrict them in this way. So if you don't have these in place, it's worth thinking about for certain positions, maybe not all of them, but certain positions, and formalizing that so that you have it consistently across the board. We have a client that we were talking to last week who has a key employee, someone who is critical to their business, and one of their clients has offered that person a job at $4 an hour more, plus health benefits for the whole family, which this company doesn't offer. And they came to us and they said, well, what can we do about this? And because they don't really want to go and say, sure, we'll match it. Doesn't necessarily set the tone. And in this company, everybody in the company talks about everything, which I'm sure none of your company people talk about what they make or what their benefits are. But in this company, they do. And so she's, how do we address this without being bullied? And their client contract should have a non-solicitation provision where their clients can't steal their employees without some sort of either financial remedy or without permission. There are tools that you can use to keep that from happening, but they're in a situation where, what are they going to do? And they can't lose this guy. So we talked through some options that are available, and there's not a lot. They've got to decide how badly they want him, and whether they can afford him, and whether there are other people in the market. But they're growing so rapidly that they can't afford to lose this guy because they're already hiring everybody else they can find out there. So thinking about how you can protect your business with things like restrictive covenants on the employee side and even on your customer side. Performance reviews, I talked a little bit about this earlier. Formalizing performance reviews is another area that we're seeing a lot of emphasis. If you do them, if you say you're going to do them, make sure you do them. And have clear metrics, have a clear system for what they mean. Because if they don't have any significance, they're either tied to your bonus, they're tied to some sort of job advancement. If they're not formal, they don't have any influence on the employee's behavior. So you have the carrot or the stick, right? With a performance review. You're either gonna get dinged, and what does dinged mean in your business, or you're gonna get rewarded, and what does that mean in your business? So really try to have a clear connection to either advancement in the company or compensation, so that those performance reviews have substance and significance, and that they are formal and they're taken seriously. In a lot of cases, they are, it's a informal process that the business does, and it's still valuable to keep tabs on how people are doing. But if you want it to be a tool that helps you drive behavior, it needs to be more formal than that. And I like the idea of the alignment with goals and culture. For those of you who've been in big companies before, larger companies have 10-page performance evaluation processes that you fill out goals based on certain criteria, and then your manager responds to those, and then you have a meeting. There's a reason for that in large companies, because you do want to tie the behavior to specific values and specific cultural activities in the business. So think about that as part of your performance reviews as well. And then we're seeing a lot of clarification of policies and procedures, employment manuals being sort of the core element there. How do we take these cool benefits that we're offering, flex time, telecommuting, access to different kinds of technology, social media, all these things that we are offering as alternative benefits, how do we take those and formalize them in a way that the business kind of doesn't get lost or mixed up in the nuance and the lack of definition in these? So we've had clients that allowed their employees to use their own computers and work from home, which seems okay for a small business. But when that employee is terminated, whether they terminate or whether the company does, how do you get all that digital information back? Do you have any right to it? It's not your computer. They've now uploaded all of that to their YouTube account or to their Facebook account, to wherever. How do you control that? So having the policies and procedures that specify use of technology, access to documents, the ability to share different kinds of documents. In a flex time scenario, kind of old school is the idea of comp time, right? Well, I'm supposed to work 40 hours, but I worked 45, so I'll take 5 off of next week. Is that okay in your business? Is it not okay in your business? Do you structure it that way? How do you deal with overtime? So again, formalizing these processes, and one of the most critical pieces is actually following through. We've had a number of companies that have had PTO or vacation policies that say, okay, you can only carry forward 20 hours or 40 hours or whatever it is, and they never really enforce it. So people are carrying forward 150 hours, and there's all kinds of people who have time that's like weeks and weeks and weeks of time, and then they terminate, and the policy says you pay that out. Well, our policy actually says that we only allow you to carry forward 40. Yeah, but you've allowed me to carry forward 160. Pay it out. Well, I don't have to. Well, you did for Joe when Joe left. Now you've got a real problem. So the consistency of the application of your policies is really critical as well. Having the policies in place, having them documented, having the employees know what they are, and then consistently